men that look like me have been calling the shots for hundreds of years. And there is long needed equality working its way through advertising, marketing, and public relations at the moment. I think one of the first things that men need to do is understand that success can look different to how it may have done before, and that there is happiness to be found in life with not always being the person that is deciding what is happening at government, deciding what is going into arts and culture, making the calls in an agency environment, driving creative, driving strategy. And that there is a very, very different life that men can lead and can embrace equality in a way that they've never done before. All the statistics show that women are outperforming men at college. Women are outperforming men, often in early careers, and yet we still have huge levels of inequality when it comes to pay in agency environments. We still have far too little underrepresentation of women in leadership roles, and men have to be part of this solution. And I'm sure we can come on to this, but there are many, many active things that men can do. But first of all, they have to realize there is another way in which they can be happy, and both men and women can be happy together.
I want to just add to something that Matt said, which is, I remember Melinda Gates was quoted as saying, we've created companies that work for our fathers, but that don't work for us. And so when you talk about your power issue, this is an issue of power. And power has been in the hands of white men for a very long time. And the pendulum, it just seems, in a year, it swung from here to here. And so it's a scary time to be a man and know when you're saying something that's politically correct or not, appropriate and supportive and not. And companies like mine, she runs it, need to create a forum for men to be part of the community and part of the solution.
Actually, yes, please.
But I also think that as a black woman, or being black or brown, there's another layer of where we're penalized for speaking up against anything that has to do with what we deal with at work, what we deal with our clients, what we deal with on an account, the racism and the subversive racism and the institutionalized racism that comes into the fold when we talk about the fact that something is happening. So in most cases, people that look like me or have African descent or Latino or whatever you'd like to quantify as someone that's a person of color, there's another layer of problematic issues that follow up with being a male or being a female. And in these agency environments, there's a few things that comes a little bit ahead of me too when you're black, right? One, you know that you're the minority in most majority agencies. Two, you know that most agencies, unless they're aware of it and doing something, they just pay their quota fee at the end of the year for not fulfilling the diversity quota, and they don't really care about it. So I think that, to be honest, most of us in this room are not surprised that someone like Brett Kavanaugh is going to be nominated for Supreme Court. We're not surprised that Trump is president. And in most cases, there's always going to be a concern that when you say, hey, I'm a person that's experiencing something that is based on me being a woman, when you're black, you're always shut down or silenced because of that being before you being male or female. I just want to be honest about that.
And I really appreciate you for saying that. And Mary, I really appreciate you for saying that because it is something that happens, but it's also in the same lane. How can we, as ambassadors for this movement, how can we make it a little bit more of a conversation that can be safely had? And then when someone does bring something to the table, how can someone advocate for that? Anybody can take that question.
Yeah, well, I really do believe that men are the missing ingredient right now because women have been showing up and leaning in and optimizing and marching for so long, and now it's time for men to up their advocacy. It's overdue, in fact. So I'm really proud 3% created an ambassadors training that we delivered at Golan, Matt's agency, that was fascinating, where we did create a safe environment for men to ask rookie questions and realize they're not sure of their role. And we spent a lot of time figuring out how to show specific men what allyship looks like in their roles, in their agency environment right now. And I believe that the men that participated in that felt that they, to Matt's point, this is not about men are ceding some control of something and losing something. This is about a more gender equal society where everyone prospers, where everyone's happier. And I think the men get that, but they're so aware right now what not to do, and no one's
Yes.
telling them what to do. And this is a moment where I think we all need to help the men in our lives step into a bigger role as advocates.
And let's be clear that inclusivity is good for business.
Yes.
So inclusivity is good for business in several ways. One, you know that African American folks are the highest folks that have the most mobile proliferation on devices. Two, you know that people of color drive culture. So if you're able to say that you have an inclusive environment that is very aware of the things that it needs to do and address, you generate more employee retention. You generate stronger contracts. You generate more comfortable people feeling comfortable to give their best work.
Yes.
Like feeling like you have to tone down yourself. And whether you're a woman in general, whether you can't say to your boss, like, I need to take off because my period is kicking my ass.
Right.
If you feel like you can't just do that, what are you supposed to really be able to do when it comes to dealing with someone who is harassing you or coming at you in a totally inappropriate way? There's so many things that we have to work through as women just to feel comfortable in general by even asking for tampons to be in the office or the bathroom. Like, it starts from that core of knowing that you have an audience that needs to feel accessible and included. And I think that workplaces really need to see more data and more evidence that inclusivity, when done right, is good for business. It keeps your accounts happy, it keeps your employees happy, and it keeps you as somewhere when people think of the top 5 best places to work. When someone says, what's happening in Ad Age, where do I want to go? They think of you first.
So I just want to add to that, you know, if you think about the marketing media tech industry, for so long, the industry has been so homogenous that a lot of what went on with Me Too, we knew about it, we've talked about it, there have been stories about it, but we accepted it. We were afraid to do
Yeah.
anything about it.
Right.
And part of the real problem is that our industry is very homogenous. And so when you're hiring someone and you're a white woman or male, you tend to hire people you know.
Right.
And so people, young black women, look up and say, there's no one in the C-suite like me. And so maybe I don't belong here.
Right,
And that problem perpetuates it. And that's one of the initiatives we're taking on, an initiative we call the Inclusion and Diversity Accountability Consortium, where we're trying to help companies change that dynamic in 3 ways: measure,
Yes.
have dialogue,
Yes.
and promise to act. And those are 3 things we're trying to do so that people know where they are and know what they have to do and learn from one another in how to change this dynamic.
Right.
And Lynn, you said something very important here, talking about those that are already in the industry. Actually, I want to use that as a pivot point. I want to talk about, we already know what's happening around the Time's Up moment. And something that hit me really hard is that if we want to convince women to stay in advertising and to not listen and to stay here and do the work that we're doing, and we have this movement going on, why don't we just listen to the women that have been already on the outside of the agency? We can maybe do some focus groups with them and find out what made you want to leave, what made you feel uncomfortable, what made you feel like you couldn't go to your boss about something like this that was so important, right? With that sentiment, and this can go to anybody, how would somebody that has an issue come to their employer, their CEO, their HR director? What kind of advice would we give to somebody out there that might have an issue around either Time's Up or Time's Up for us? Me Too is the Hollywood people. But,
Couple of things. One, it is so important to listen to the voices of those people who have been put off by this industry. our chief creative officer, a remarkable woman called Carolyn Detman, started a movement called Have Her Back, because many creative women had been in environments that were, and creative environments tend to be the most unreconstructed parts of agencies, are very male dominated, much bad behavior, whether it was microaggressions all the way through to the stuff that you have seen in the news. And what she has tried to achieve, and what we are trying to achieve, is to say to these women that we have your back and you are welcome back into this industry, and we want your help in creating environments that have really, really changed. And we don't do this to be politically progressive or because it's the right thing to do. It's because of what Mary said. Diversity is the engine of invention. It makes work better. How on earth can we, as marketeers and agency people, talk to this nation if everybody looks a little bit like me or to my friends on my left? We have to understand those insights. And it's all very well hiring people and getting them in, but the hard work is really creating a truly inclusive environment where you can lead in the way that you want to. And leadership doesn't necessarily look the way it did either aesthetically or in the practices that your businesses might have done in years to go. So there's an awful lot of work to do. But a big part is starting that conversation and inviting those people back into agency life and to help us change this industry forever.
Are agencies like Golan, have they reacted to this and created policies that are no tolerance though now as a result of this?
Yeah, we went to every single one of our offices across the United States. It scared the shit out of our head of HR. And we said, in a room like this, tell us what is happening in small groups and in big groups. What is happening in your teams? What is happening with your clients? We want to hear everything. And we surfaced all of these stories. And we listened to each other and understood or tried to understand and have empathy with what it's like to be in specific communities or to be a woman or in some cases to be a man in some of these environments. And then we are in the middle of rewriting all of our policies. What happens if a client does something that is inappropriate? Before, you probably would have sat on it, not said anything. We are actively trying to surface these stories so that we know about them and then we can change the way, because the workplace has to be a safe environment for you to come and work. You cannot be coming and being scared of what you might say or how you react to a client or a colleague, whether that's a little microaggression. We broke it into clueless, creepy, and criminal. Criminal, you can understand, that's kind of straight to the police. The other two, there's a blurred line there. And even on some of those clueless things, someone doesn't quite know, they don't understand the impact of what they're saying has on another person. And that's why the Manbassador program is really good. We put all of our men through that so that they could actually understand the implications of some of their actions, even if they were unintended.
And actually, I think this is a good segue for Lynn. Matt, you definitely opened it up beautifully here. Lynn, could you tell us how could we get men a little bit more comfortable to have these conversations?
Well, just a couple of things. You know, if you look at some of the factors that help change the pipeline problem. So if you look at our industry today, 50-50 pretty much on a gender split, but 80-20 on a white versus people of color split, right when they're starting out their career. So it starts with recruiting a diverse slate, training people how to interview, requiring diverse slates from your external HR people. So it starts with that, teaching people about unconscious bias and having those trainings so they understand it. We all have it, but we don't necessarily realize that we have it. We have it on geographic levels, family levels, religious levels, race. It's not just color. It's not just gender. So that kind of training is really important. And also, I think, having companies embrace a culture that understands that it's good for business, because brands get that. I mean, if you look at the P&Gs of the world, if you look at the AT&Ts of the world, they're starting to measure and incorporate some of these things. For a man, sponsor. Women don't necessarily feel comfortable putting themselves out there,
Right.
saying, I can do the job. But a man can be very effective in being your advocate. And I'm guessing part of your ambassador program must have touched on the importance of sponsorship. Give women, all women, a seat at the table. You're in a room, you're in a conference room, the table's full. Make space
And I think
for that woman.
And I think that from that angle of what you're saying, especially when you have to consider the angle of being, I'll say this, black. I think that from what you have to look at now versus where things were even when I was heavy in agencies, and I've been through 5 with great work and great references, and now I've started my own cannabis agency now. I think that what you have to look at is the fact that you have to build enough evidence and build enough support for yourself to make those approaches and say what you need to say about things that are happening in your workplace. It is not right and it's not legal in New York for anyone to get away with approaching you or dealing with you in any way, shape, or form that is out of line. So there is always that need to make sure that you have the right way to talk about what you're saying and having the right confidence and the right support. And that support is something that is usually only found amongst your peers that might look like you, but don't dissuade yourself or let down your ability to make sure that you stand up for yourself. Don't fear that factor of standing up for what you need. Do not put yourself aside and sit in misery, because it's going to make your work suffer. It's going to make your life suffer.
Yeah.
It's going to make you not sleep at night. It's going to make you very upset, and it's not going to drive you to even want to continue on to another workplace. I think Golan's done a lot of great work. Not every agency is doing that work. You can find those agencies that are doing similar work and go to those places and apply your talents, but you shouldn't sit, no matter you're black, white, or candy stripe, and suffer in silence. It's no longer acceptable. I did that. I think all of us have done that in different ways. And I'll say, as someone who is senior level, doesn't look it and is very happy with being someone that agencies come to, can consult, and still have their own business, there's still great ways to be involved in all the creative processes and use all your juices in this industry. What I command people to do now is feel confident in making sure that you are not uncomfortable. That's the number one priority that you should have.
And to your point, I wanted to take a second and read this from the New York Times. It's a data. It says that sexual harassment is pervasive across industries, but especially in low-wage service jobs. For example, more than 25% of sexual harassment charges filed with the EEOC in the last decade came from industries such as service sector workers. So it's not just this one, not just this industry. We're just the industry that a lot of people see, but it's even more pervasive in the smaller ones, those that don't actually get to the big rooms. So how would somebody,
Well, I feel more hopeful now than ever that the pendulum has swung. Companies can't ignore it, even if they have ignored it. They absolutely can't ignore it. The political climate, just will not tolerate it any longer. That doesn't mean that we don't have a tremendous amount to do to make more inclusive and diverse work environments and to create policies that support all employees. But I think in terms of the sexual harassment and abuse, I feel that because of this, we'll make more progress now because people will demand it before they'll even take a job with a company.
oh yeah, absolutely. I think we're hearing that. Isn't that right, Kat?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you just read from the New York Times, there's a lot, embedded in that.
Oh yeah.
Women make up the majority of women in this country work in the restaurant business.
Yeah.
And I've been following this. It's really fascinating. Sexual harassment is built into the way servers are treated, how they're paid, how they're tipped. And the majority of women start out in the restaurant business. And one of the things I've heard is that the sexual harassment is so bad that a lot of women that now sit in our offices and ad agencies started as a waitress at Olive Garden, and it's never as bad as that.
Yeah.
Kind of like your foundational first job. You're like, that was really overt and bad, and I, was young. So we kind of think, well, it's not as bad as that. But it doesn't mean it's okay.
Like you still go to sleep at night like, did he just hit on me during a client meeting?
Right.
Did you just, like you start gaslighting your own self and you start, like you'll be at the gym trying to work it out and then you'll be in the locker like, wait, I think he just mentioned my butt in a meeting. So like, even that, if you're over 21 or like my first job was Olive Garden, like back when Olive Garden was actually popping. So, you know, like, you, even at any age, whether you are 50 and you are a creative director or an ECD and you're a woman and you're working on an account that's a spirits account and everybody's a guy and they say something to you that is out of line or someone writes in a memo that you're a MILF, that's not, that happens.
No.
Yeah.
That's not happening. If you're wearing a dress and someone can't stop talking about it in a meeting in front of other people, and that is harassment. So we need to be very clear, although ethics will tell you, you know, whatever your code of ethics is fine. But ethically, if you know that what you would say to somebody else would make them uncomfortable as a man or a woman, and you're receiving it and it makes you uncomfortable, that doesn't mean that you're tripping. That means that you need to you need to sort through that. And if you're able to rapport that in a way where you can let someone know that makes you uncomfortable, that's great. At this point in time in this industry, now that they know that Me Too and Time's Up is real, they're gonna check their own selves. But if not, you have to feel comfortable to stand up for yourself. I'm saying this as someone that didn't. I think we all have our stories, but I really encourage people, especially those that look like me, now is the time to not sit back and let anybody mistake you or treat you or blacklist you. That is unacceptable. That is not happening.
Yes, to all those things. You're very right. You brought up something that was very important. We in the advertising industry, there are a lot of long hours, and we also know that when you work 80 hours of the day, you're gonna find someone that you might like. Let's talk about that blurred line real quick, because, I mean, we are a tribe, you know, we get friendly, we knock them down. But let's talk about like the opportunity when you said something, you maybe stepped in it, but you genuinely don't really want to be painted like, maybe you stepped in it and you genuinely had a mistake. How could somebody back away from that without it going down the slippery slope of yikes? Does anybody understand?
I mean, I've thought about this a little bit since I met you. I mean, it's tough because when you spend, I mean, a lot of people, have you ever met a significant other through a job? Raise your hand. Me.
Look at this.
You know, so, you know, there's a distinction between somebody using their power or their level versus just a natural, you know, interest in someone. And I think that what you have to be careful about is not using your power to intimidate somebody. So as a manager, I think it's somewhat hard to establish a relationship with someone that you're interested in because of that dynamic. But I think that it's okay to have, you know, an initial conversation but then respect that person. It just becomes a little bit more difficult in this world today when there's power involved.
Amen.
Yeah, the power thing is critical. So, you know, at our place, if you are a senior person that has responsibility over someone else and I think also you're allowed to maybe ask someone once. So get it right, because you've got one shot. But if you are in a management position, then you cannot. The times have changed. The new reality is now, if you just need to find a partner somewhere else. If there is no hierarchy,
There are plenty of fish in the sea.
there is a big city. If there is no hierarchy involved, then I think it's human nature. I mean, I think many people do meet their partners at work. But the power thing is the most important, that cannot be a factor. Someone cannot feel coerced to say something that maybe they don't want to say because their performance rating or are they going to get the right briefs? Are they going to get to work on the cool creative work right now? So there's some simple rules about this that must be followed, which should mean that some of these situations don't happen, whether it was intended or not. You can imagine a situation where someone senior suggests, oh, let's work on this pitch in my room or something afterwards. And then, and that happens a lot in agency, midnight, 1 a.m. pitches, and then maybe that person goes, okay then, and then maybe the other person interprets as, oh, well, they must be, you can see how this very quickly
Yeah.
can get into a very dangerous
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. Well, I don't want us, we can go all day, obviously, because like this is such a big topic. At this moment, unless my panelists want to say anything else.
I just wanted to say one thing, which
Yeah.
is that the research we've done at 3%, the very best way to address all of these problems and countless others is to have leadership that is reflective of population. It's not that hard. And Matt, you mentioned that women are out educating men. Black women are the most educated demographic in America with the highest stated desire to lead. Hire black women, put them in charge. Hire men of color, hire older creatives, younger. It's like, it's not that hard. It all self-corrects when leadership looks like that. And so I feel like that's the silver bullet.
And you're right, it
I
hits
think
a lot of kids.
measurements also at the core to it, because I was being interviewed yesterday by a company, and I said, imagine that if you were driving your car and your gas gauge didn't work and you didn't know where you were. You launched a new product and you didn't measure sales or expenses. You wouldn't be in business. There haven't been enough measurement tools in place to understand where we are. Companies have resisted it because they don't like the news.
Yeah.
The news is bad. So what we're trying to do is get people to confront it, not shame them, but help change it. Because it's not a supply problem, as you said.
Right.
It's not a supply problem, but if there's a definite pipeline problem, and there's a definite problem with the lack of measurement.
Yeah. Just building on Kat's point, we have a creative director role open in New York right now. I would love someone in this room
Yay.
to take that job.
Y'all hear
Please.
that? Y'all hear that?
Please come and give me your card afterwards. I have a stack in my wallet and some in my briefcase. Nothing would make me prouder if someone here came and took that job and helped us change.
Yes.